Hello and welcome back. In recent years, the UK has witnessed a notable increase in murder convictions among teenagers. These cases challenge assumptions about youth innocence and force society to confront uncomfortable truths about violence, trauma, and neglect. These cases are not isolated, they reflect a broader trend of younger perpetrators, often influenced by social media, peer dynamics, and exposure to violent ideologies. Several overlapping causes have emerged from expert analysis. Platforms like TikTok and Snapchat have been used to plan attacks, share violent content, and reinforce harmful groupthink. Some teens, particularly boys, are drawn into misogynistic online communities that glorify violence and emotional detachment. Many perpetrators have histories of neglect, abuse, or untreated psychological issues, yet support systems often fail to intervene early. In some cases, violence is used to gain respect among peers, especially in environments where gang culture or bullying is dominant. Today we look at cases of teen killers from more recent years, but let's head straight into the cases. The first case we look at is a family murder. Craig Mulligan was one of 3 people convicted of the murder of 5-year-old Logan Mwangi in Bridgend in July 2021. The other 2 defendants were Logan's mother, Angharad Williamson, and Williamson's partner, John Cole. Logan was found in the River Ogmore in late July 2021 after he suffered severe injuries over a period of time. Investigations and reporting set out a timeline of escalating harm and missed safeguarding opportunities, culminating in Logan's death and the arrest of Williamson, Cole and Mulligan. Logan was born on the 15th of March 2016 in the Princess of Wales Hospital. His parents were Benjamin and Williamson. They separated soon after his birth, with Benjamin returning to his hometown of Brentwood, Essex. Williamson began a relationship with John Cole in 2019. Cole was a former member of the National Front who had received a series of criminal convictions, some of them for violent offences in the 2000s, and he had a reputation for racism. He was known to use racist insults about Logan, who was mixed race. Cole moved in with Williamson and the couple had a son together in January 2020. They ended all contact between Logan and his father, who last saw each other in 2019. Cole and Williamson were described by a family friend as strict parents who took a punitive approach to disciplining the boy. Punishments Logan experienced included being forced to spend extended periods of time in push-up positions, prevented from participating in family takeaways, made to stand outside in the garden, and deliberately burnt. A neighbour said that Logan's bedroom window was constantly covered with a sheet and that he was frequently shouted at by Cole. Logan's conditions declined during the early months of the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020. During this time, Cole's 12-year-old stepson, Craig Mulligan, and his mother had joined the household due to the latter inaccurately claiming to be suffering from cancer. In August, Logan broke his arm after falling down the stairs. His mother initially said she did not immediately seek medical treatment, but instead tried to pop the bone back into its socket. She later said that it was Cole who did this and Mulligan who had pushed Logan down the stairs. The incident was referred to the police. Logan was described by his teachers as returning to school in September with a stammer, incontinence issues, and an unhealthy appearance. In January 2021, Logan was placed on the Child Protection Register, which meant that social workers would visit the family once every 10 days. Early in 2021, Mulligan was assaulted by his mother. This led them to both leaving the household, with the former being removed from his mother's custody and the latter being sectioned under the Mental Health Act. On the 26th of July 2021, 13-year-old Craig Mulligan was placed in Cole's custody. The son of Cole's previous partner, Mulligan was an aggressive boy with a history of mental health problems. Cole had raised Mulligan as his own son since he was 9 months old. He had been living in local authority care for 6 months after being assaulted by his mother. One of the foster families he lived with described him as having threatened to kill them. They said he had spoken fondly of Cole and Williamson, but expressed a desire to kill Logan, whose name he never used. Logan was last seen alive by someone outside the household on the 27th of July. That day, Cole had a FaceTime call with a friend who saw Logan colouring on the stairs and described him as appearing happy and joyful. The precise chain of events which led to Logan's death is unknown, with different suspects providing different accounts. However, physical attacks on him appear to have escalated on the 29th of July, possibly due to a broken stereo, which was blamed on Logan. Logan's social worker made a visit to the household that day, but was not allowed to see him due to his illness, COVID. An altercation between Williamson and Mulligan took place that afternoon, with the latter physically preventing the former from leaving the property and both appearing very emotionally agitated. Shortly after 2:43 a.m. on the 31st of July, Cole and Mulligan were recorded on CCTV footage removing Logan from the house. They then made a second trip to discard his damaged pajama top. Someone in one of the neighbouring houses overheard a verbal disagreement at 5 a.m. between a woman and a man, where the former expressed concern that her son had disappeared. Soon after the overheard disagreement, Williamson called the police to say that Logan was missing. A police search began and he was found in the river. Cole, Williamson and Mulligan were all arrested on suspicion of murder on the day after the discovery. They initially denied responsibility, first saying that he had disappeared from their home without their knowledge. However, evidence uncovered during the investigation suggested that they had all participated. This included the CCTV footage that I just mentioned. All three were found guilty of murder and perverting the course of justice in Cardiff Crown Court in April 2022. They were later sentenced in June 2022 to life sentences, with a minimum with 28 years, 29 years and 15 years for Craig Mulligan. Commentators, independent reviews and news coverage emphasised systemic failures in safeguarding. Reviewers highlighted missed opportunities by professionals to identify and act on signs of repeated injury and neglect, and debates since the conviction have focused on how agencies can better protect vulnerable children, how to manage extreme violent behaviour in adolescents, and how foster placements and monitoring can be improved to reduce risk. Craig Mulligan remains in prison and is 16 years old. Next we move on to Bardia Shojaeifard, who was convicted of the murder of 15-year-old Alfie Lewis, who was stabbed outside a school in an area of Leeds in November 2023. Bardia was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 13 years. Court and police accounts record that Alfie was attacked on his way home from school and collapsed at the scene in front of parents and young pupils. Reporting described the killing as senseless and carried out in full view of bystanders. Prosecutor Craig Hassel said Bardia had walked towards Alfie before stabbing him with a knife he had taken from a kitchen drawer at home. At trial, the teenager, who was 15 years old, had denied murder, claiming to have been scared of Alfie following 2 previous incidents, with the latter of these happening on Halloween. Giving evidence, he said he walked past Alfie's house with a bag of fireworks, and Alfie had said to him, "Give me the bag or something worse than last time is going to happen." The defendant said that when he returned to school after a half-term break, he decided to take a knife from the kitchen to protect himself. During the trial, witnesses including children, school staff and passing members of public gave evidence, saying they had seen him attack Alfie. Following the attack, he fled the scene but was arrested an hour later by officers from West Yorkshire Police. A knife recovered near to the scene matched a set found at his home, and traces of Alfie were found on the blade. Police said the handle had been painted black, and Bardia is thought to have carried the knife with him at school all day before seeking out Alfie at home time. The court heard that Bardia had a worrying interest in knives, and police found several pictures on his phone of him holding them, including one where a blade had been photoshopped into his hand, and another taken on a family holiday to Iran. The judge described him as outwardly normal with no interest in crime. However, he said he had carefully planned his attack on Alfie to gain revenge for whatever happened on the 31st of October. Bardia remains in prison serving his 13 years and is 17 years old. 16-year-old Shane Cunningham was convicted of the murder of 16-year-old Mikey Roynan, who was fatally stabbed at a house party in Bath in June 2023. Cunningham was detained for life. Mike Roynan suffered a stab wound during a crowded 16th birthday party. The attack prompted a major police inquiry and multiple arrests of adolescents who had been present at the event. At trial, the jury found that Cunningham delivered the fatal wound. Two other teenagers, Cartel, Bushnell and Leo Knight, were originally convicted of manslaughter in relation to the incident, but subsequently had their convictions quashed on appeal, leaving Cunningham as the principal defendant still serving a life sentence. It was heard in the trial at the Bristol Crown Court that in 2023, Mikey was stabbed in the garden and collapsed on the driveway, with two weapons later recovered by police. The first knife, which was found in a drain, was nearly 25 centimetres long, and scientists found Mikey's blood on the blade. The second knife, which was recovered from the underneath hedge, was 7 inches, 80 centimetres long, and had traces of Mikey again. During the trial, Cunningham claimed he was acting in self-defence when he attacked Mikey after claiming his victim had swung a knife towards his friends in the garden. Shane Cunningham is still serving his life sentence with a minimum of 16 years. He is 18 years old. Next we look at Yura Varybrus, who is the teenage knife man who took the life of 17-year-old Charlie Kosa on the dance floor of a crowded party in July 2023. Varybrus was 16 at the time, and Kosa was attending an outdoor party event at a farmhouse in West Sussex. They were not known to each other. Varybrus is a teenager of Ukrainian parentage who was reported to have been born in November 2007 and raised largely in Sussex. Media reports described him as having split cultural and religious influences through his family and as a pupil in local schools prior to the events that led to his criminal prosecution. According to police and court reports, a fight broke out between the pair after Varybrus was asked to leave the party due to his behaviour towards a young woman at the event, as well as his apparent actions towards the partygoer. Jurors heard how he had drunk a large amount of vodka and was angry at being asked to leave. He then stabbed Charlie 3 times in the chest. His attack was in part captured in the background of a video being recorded by someone else at the event. Retelling what happened next, prosecutor Alan Gardner said at his trial, in the darkness and noise of a crowded dance floor, his use of the knife and the blows of the knife went unnoticed by those in the vicinity. The defendant stabbed Charlie with that knife as they came together on the dance floor. Gardner continued, going on to explain that the killer was later spotted covered in blood and overheard telling someone else that he had stabbed someone. Police quickly arrived on the scene and Charlie was still conscious at the time. Tragically, however, he suffered a cardiac arrest in the ambulance on the way to hospital. He passed away 2 days later. During his first appearance at the Crown Court just days after the murder, he pleaded guilty to murder. He later successfully applied to withdraw his plea, meaning the case went to trial. At his trial, he did not give evidence but denied both charges. The judge said that while she accepted the crime was spontaneous, it was not clear why he had brought the knife to the party in the first place. As a result, it was a significant factor in her sentencing decision that he knew the knife was available to him. "You armed yourself with a knife on that dance floor," the judge continued, adding that the graveness of the case and the level of youth crime prompted her to make his identity public. At Brighton Crown Court on the 19th of June 2024, he was sentenced with a minimum term of 16 years and found guilty of murder. He remains in prison and is now 18 years old. We move on to now Rashane Douglas from Huddersfield, who was involved in a high-profile incident outside a nightclub in Halifax on the 1st of October 2023 that resulted in multiple victims and a subsequent murder trial. Rashane Douglas, 19, fatally stabbed Joshua Clark, 21, and Hader Shah, 19, outside Maggie's in Commercial Street, Halifax, on the 1st of October. A trial at Bradford Crown Court was told Douglas had launched his attack after a row over a woman. During the early hours after the row outside Maggie's nightclub, Douglas attacked a group of men, fatally stabbing Joshua Clark, 21, and Hader Shah, 19, and injuring an 18-year-old Brandon Coop, who survived the attack. The court heard Douglas had become angry and jealous when he arrived at Maggie's and found that a woman he had been expecting to meet was already with Mr. Shah. A fight broke out outside the club. On the 12th of March, following a trial, Douglas was convicted of 2 counts of murder and 1 count of wounding with intent to cause grievous bodily harm. He was seen on CCTV putting the weapon down a drain. At the time of the murders, Douglas had also been in breach of a suspended sentence imposed in January 2023 for possession of a knife. Sentencing him to life imprisonment, Judge Jonathan Rose told him, "You drew the knife, and then you used the knife to stab Joshua, Shah, and then Brandon in rapid succession. In my view, you did not have to do so." Yassine Iqbal, 18, of Holboa, Huddersfield, was also found guilty of assisting an offender. The court heard that he had organised a taxi from the scene, let Douglas stay at his house and helped him dispose of his clothes. He had no previous convictions, so was sentenced to 12 months at a young offender institution. Douglas received a life sentence with a minimum term of 28 years for the 2 murders, alongside sentences for wounding of the surviving victim. He is 21 years old. Next we look at 3 teenagers: Jordan, Tams, Leandro, Lopes, and Kriesha, Stroud. Shortly after 9:10 p.m. on April 27th, emergency services responded to a report of concern for welfare of a 40-year-old man at a property on Elliott Drive in the Felling area. Gary Belfield from the Manchester area was found to have sustained injuries consistent with having been stabbed and sadly died at the scene. Following Gary's death, his family described their devastation at the loss of their father of 6, who they described as a caring, friendly person who was popular in his hometown. A second man, his son, aged in his 20s, was also seriously injured in the incident. He has since made a full recovery. The force's major investigation team swiftly launched an investigation, and 3 teenagers were soon arrested on suspicion of Gary's murder in 2024. Early inquiries found that Lopes, now 18, along with Jordan, Tams, 17, and Kriesha, who was 15, travelled to the address to settle a pre-existing dispute. Gary sustained 11 separate injuries in the fatal attack after Lopes and Tams entered the property and stabbed both men multiple times. The second victim managed to raise the alarm at a nearby garage after escaping from his attackers, and all 3 offenders were later arrested and each charged with the murder and attempted murder. Lopes, Stroud, and Tams were found guilty of all charges by a jury in December following a 4-week trial at Newcastle Crown Court. Lopes was handed a life sentence with a minimum term of 26 years. Tams was handed a life sentence with a minimum term of 26 years, and Stroud was handed a life sentence with a minimum term of 20 years. They both remain in prison, apart from Jordan Tams, who died on the 18th of October 2025. He was residing at a young offender institution, Deerbolt, at the time of his death, with the prison service confirming that the prisons and probation will now investigate the circumstances. Now we look at 2 teenagers, Kyle Dermody and Trey Stewart-Gayle. They were convicted of the murder of 14-year-old Nathaniel Shani in Manchester. Nathaniel, Dermody and Stewart-Gayle were from the same local area and had previously known each other. Reporting at trial and in the press described a background of petty disputes and local peer dynamics linked to school, friendship groups and minor drug-related tensions that contributed to the confrontation leading to Nathaniel's death. Nathaniel was said to have viewed himself as a hard kid who was interested in a reputation that matched that. Prior to his death, Nathaniel had become involved in street-level dealing through people older than him. Detectives said that he had been exploited by a dealer and had only been involved for about 2 weeks prior to his murder. Nathaniel's family had no idea of his association with drugs, police said. On the day of the killing, cannabis had been stolen from a friend of Nathaniel's by Stewart-Gayle. Nathaniel was said to have viewed the incident as a loss of face and was determined to get the drugs back. An arrangement was made for a 1v1 fight to sort things. Nathaniel arrived in the square at about 6 p.m. and met with the pair. Stewart-Gayle was said to have tried to egg him on. During the ensuing confrontation, Nathaniel punched Dermody, who produced a knife and then attacked him. Stewart-Gayle told him to do it after he had produced the weapon. Nathaniel was seen clutching his neck after the attack before collapsing in the square. He was pronounced dead at 7:08 p.m. During the trial, Dermody claimed that he believed that Nathaniel had a knife and said he was acting in self-defense. Stewart-Gayle handed himself in to the police the following day. In a prepared statement, he said he had taken the screwdriver from Dermody but denied intending to use it. He said Nathaniel had disarmed him of it and threw it at Dermody. Stewart-Gayle admitted taking cannabis from another boy. Both boys were found guilty of murder after trial. Both teenagers were prosecuted as juveniles. The court found that Dermody and Stewart-Gayle guilty of murder following consideration of their ages, roles and the evidence presented. Sentencing imposed life terms with minimum terms set by the court. It's been reported that both must serve at least 13 years. They were 14 years old at the time of the crime and were sentenced in 2024. They are both now 15 years old. And that concludes our video today. Obviously, a lot of these cases are from the years 2023 and 2024. And unfortunately, while researching, just looking at this year, there have been so many more cases of teenage killings. I will be covering more of these cases in the next few videos. As always, thanks so much for watching, and until next time.